What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Now that Scream 2022 is out and I've reviewed all 5 movies, it's time to rank all 5 Scream movies from worst to best. And to be clear, I use that term worst loosely, as I actually don't dislike any of these movies. But before we begin, let me know in the comments what your ranking of the Scream movies are. As always, this is just my list and not a definitive ranking. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these ranking videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie-related content on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time, and let's jump into the list. In last place is Scream 3, which is by no means a bad movie, but it's the only entry I'd say is just okay. This is easily the most lacking in terms of cleverness or wit. Kevin Williamson's original outline for this was disregarded as a way of trying to avoid any controversy over violence in the movies, and as a result, we have this disjointed narrative where the most integral character to the original trilogy, Sidney Prescott, is sidelined for the first 2/3 of this, and her being off on her own will go on for way too long, which will lead to the film having some odd pacing issues, making it the only movie where you really feel the length quite a lot. On top of that, the dialogue tends to be overly simplistic at times, without a lot of the fun meta conversations driving the story forward. Now, it's not completely lacking in that dialogue, but for the most part, they're not at the center of each conversation, and what results is the movie kind of becoming the thing it was making fun of. Now, it's not totally unwatchable or anything. Seeing Sidney is always great, and all the other characters can be fun. Plus, the way it ties the original trilogy together was done well enough, and it could be very funny at times, but it was never consistent. So for the few clever moments it would have, it would then be followed by 2 more moments that would be something out of a generic horror movie, making this one a mixed bag. At number 4 is Scream 4, and even though this is in 4th place, keep in mind, I still think this is a great movie. It's probably the most underappreciated of all these movies, and one I'd argue was a little ahead of its time, considering it was the first attempt in this series at having legacy characters mentor a new generation of characters, which has now become more of a thing recently. Probably the most comedic of all the entries, this one does such a fun job at skewering the cliches of remakes, which were especially on the rise at the time, even though this itself really isn't a remake. And it does a fine enough job incorporating the rise of social media as well, and its influence on pop culture. The one big thing it has against it though, besides some slight pacing issues, is when it comes to the reveal of the 2 killers, as this has both one of the best villains of the movie and one of the worst villains. Which of course I won't spoil here in case you haven't seen the movie, but despite its faults, including a weird Instagram-like filter, and even though it's only in 4th place, it's still very funny, the performances are all compelling, you have some fun new characters, and a slew of great cameos. So all in all, I think it's a blast. At number 3 is Scream 2022, the first film without Wes Craven would have made him proud. While a bit more serious than what you're used to with this franchise, it still lines up with the other 4 movies very nicely, with its mix of satire and meta commentary. Though this time, this fully commits to something that 4 only played around with, and shifts the focus primarily to a brand new set of characters, with Sidney, Dewey, and Gale only playing supporting roles. And while it's great to see them when they appear, especially David Arquette, the real heart and soul of this movie is both Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega as these 2 estranged sisters. Now, the film's big topics of conversation are quote-unquote requels, or reboots/sequels, along with the state of horror movies in the last decade, as well as the effects of toxic fandom, and I thought it hit the nail on the head in regards to all those topics quite well. Like other movies reviving long-running franchises, it does go back to the roots of the original, which can be for better or worse, but it still keeps moving forward and offers another fun time. While there are rumblings of more of these possibly happening, if this really is the last film, it would be a solid note to go out on. At number 2 is Scream 2, the sequel that provides a little bit more of the same as the first, but mostly uses it to its advantage to offer us a wildly fun revisit into these returning characters' worlds. Of all these sequels, this is the one that flows almost perfectly from the original, acting as such a natural continuation of many of the themes and storylines from the first, making this and the first movie a nice double feature. While structurally it feels slightly familiar, especially considering it involves copycat killers looking to recreate Woodsboro, there's also a no one and nowhere safe vibe to it. Characters who survived the first movie are up for grabs here, Ghostface is showing up in public spaces, and it's not quite as obvious this time around who's behind the mask. And it makes this so much fun, even if it also retreads some familiar plot points that we could have done without along the way. And while the first film is pretty meta, this manages to crank that self-awareness up a notch, with characters constantly skewering the tropes of sequels nearly every other line, which led to quite a few great humorous exchanges. It suffers just a touch due to the fact that the original script leaked and it was rewritten in a noticeably rushed manner, but it's still a mostly consistent time, and it's still a great sequel that lives up nicely to the original. But in first place is, of course, Scream. The original still remains a landmark film in the horror genre, coming in at a time where slasher movies in particular were becoming known for being cheap and derivative, especially considering the countless sequels that were being cranked out then. While the characters do often find themselves in situations similar to those they criticize, they are mostly approached with a refreshing sense of self-awareness that often skewered the many cliches associated with horror. Now, with the exception of the classic opening scene and a few other gruesome moments, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a scary movie, especially considering how its bleeding 90s feel dates it a bit, but it definitely is a lot of fun. Many of the sequences are absolute classics, a lot of the dialogue still memorable today, and the cast is all around a lot of fun. Neve Campbell as Cindy remains one of the best horror leads to this day, while Jamie Kennedy's great as the audience surrogate Randy, and Matthew Lillard's hilarious as the weird and creepy Stu. This is a classic, groundbreaking horror movie. It offers a lot of thrills, a lot of laughs, and it comes in as my #1 favorite of the Scream movies. And that's my ranking of the Scream movies. And I gotta say, upon rewatching all of these, I realized I'm more of a fan of the series than I thought. While I don't think any of these movies are perfect, they're all fun. They know what they are, and they always make some interesting points when it comes to both the horror genre and the film industry in general. And they always offer something unique each time. Even 3, despite not loving that one. If we are to get more of these movies, and I'm pretty sure we will, if they're anything like what we got in this latest installment, I'd be interested to see what's in store for the future of this franchise. But let me know, what's your ranking of the Scream movies? Did you agree with this list at all? Did you disagree with it? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it. And for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.